Okay, welcome to mini lecture 3 in module 6. I just very briefly want to suggest some issues that are facing Asia right now in relation to ethnicity and ethnic groups, especially ethnic minorities. So when we talk about ethnicity, what we're really talking about is a self-identification of a group that is associated with a historical location, so in other words a homeland, oftentimes also distinct cultural aspects in terms of religion or language or livelihood. Now, ethnic majorities exist in most countries. That is, a group has the majority population. That group then oftentimes will have significant influence in government and in fact how the dominant culture of the country works. But oftentimes there are one or many ethnic minorities. That is, small groups that have very distinct cultural characteristics and, in many cases, have distinct homeland regions. In many cases, these homeland regions are on the periphery, the edges of the country, and that may, in fact, be one of the issues. So let's take a look at two quick ones right now that are in the news. One of which is the Rohingya population. So the Rohingya population's homeland is right here in the western margins of Myanmar. Now, Myanmar, again, is a Southeast Asian state, majority Buddhist. So the country has a strong Buddhist history and a distinct language. The Rohingya population, in contrast, is a much more rural population, although a significant portion of Myanmar is rural. But they are rural and they are Muslim in terms of their belief systems and are to some degree both linguistically and racially distinct. Now, as a result, the Myanmar population, the dominant Buddhist population, has oppressed, in many cases, Rohingyas, driven them off land, burned villages, acted in a manner that in some cases verges on genocide. Why? Well, that's an important question. And in reality, what we have to ask is that distinction of autonomy. Again, the homeland, do the Rohingya agitate for a homeland? And if so, how does that fit into a problematic state like Myanmar and their ability to govern? And so in this case, terrible, terrible oppression of the Rohingya people. They've become refugees throughout South Asia. And many in the world are looking at this as, again, these are genocides and crimes against humanity. Now, in China, there are a large number of ethnic minorities. But again, what I want you to notice here is that the ethnic minorities fall largely along the western margins and the lower population portions of the Chinese state. Most notably, the things that you may be familiar with, the ethnic groups you may be familiar with, are the Tibetans, the Kazakhs, and the Mongolians. The majority of China's population is ethnically Han. They speak either Mandarin or Cantonese, and again, they are a very distinct and dominant ethnic group throughout the history of China. In recent years, though, in the far west, the Uyghur population, which is to some degree racially distinct and linguistically distinct, has begun to some degree agitate towards more autonomy. And as a result, in the last 2 years, the Uyghur population has been interned, that is, put in camps, at least some of the population has been put in camps in Xinjiang province. And that's a challenging issue for much of the world, is why this is happening now and what are the implications. Now, it must be stated that some Uyghur separatists during the 2012-2013 did in fact use acts of violence, terrorism, to agitate for separation. That has really gone away. But the big question is, why now is China doing this type of internment and re-education of the Uyghur minority? And quite simply, it's because of this. China is, in a sense, rebuilding the concept of the Silk Road. And in that, what they're really trying to do is connect overland and increase their influence across Central Asia and into Europe. As a result, the possibility of losing control in Xinjiang could potentially be problematic to their long-term growth goals. As a result, more of a crackdown on this minority group. So again, think about minority groups, ethnic differences, and what are the implications of that in terms of globalization. We'll pick that up in the next lecture.